The throne room stretched for nearly half a kilometer, its ceiling lost in shadows and incense smoke. Commander Fexelar walked the length of it, with measured steps, his 4 legs clicking against the polished stone. Behind him, 2 Imperial guards followed in perfect silence. They were Vextari warriors, each standing 3 meters tall, their natural armor gleaming under the light of 1,000 floating orbs. Fexelar had walked this path many times before. He had brought news of victories, of conquered worlds, of species that bent their knees to the Empire. Today was different. Today he brought news of an insult. At the far end of the throne room, Emperor Zaltok sat upon the seat of unity. The seat was carved from a single piece of obsidian, taken from the first world the Vextari had conquered 3,000 years ago. The Emperor himself was massive, even for his species. Scars crossed his armor plating, each one a story of battle. His 4 eyes fixed on Fexelar as the commander approached. "Speak," the Emperor said. His voice was deep, carrying easily across the vast chamber. Fexelar stopped at the appropriate distance and lowered his head. "Great Emperor, I bring troubling news from the Council of Species." "The humans again?" One of the Emperor's advisors spoke from the side. Minister Krell was smaller than the warriors around him, but his mind was sharp. He managed the Empire's tribute system, ensuring that the 847 member species all paid their proper respect. "Yes, Minister," Fexelar confirmed. "Captain Sarah Chen, the human representative, has once again refused to follow proper protocol." The Emperor leaned forward slightly. "Explain." Fexelar activated a holographic display. The image showed the recent coronation ceremony. There, among the representatives of hundreds of worlds, one figure stood upright, while all others bowed. A human female, wearing a simple uniform, hands clasped behind her back. Her face showed no fear, no respect, nothing but calm observation. "During your coronation, she refused to bow," Fexelar continued. "When questioned, she stated that humans bow to no one." Murmurs rippled through the assembled advisors and guards. Such disrespect was unheard of. Species far more powerful than humanity had learned to show proper respect to the Empire. "There is more," Fexelar said. The hologram shifted to show the council chamber. Sarah Chen stood at a podium, speaking clearly. She publicly questioned the tribute system. She called it slavery. The murmurs turned to angry growls. Minister Krell's small eyes narrowed. "Slavery? We offer protection. We maintain peace. The tribute system has worked for 3 millennia. She presented documents, Fexelar said quietly. Evidence that several species cannot meet their tribute quotas without essentially selling their own people into labor. She demanded reform. Emperor Zaltox was silent for a long moment. His 4 eyes studied the hologram, watching the human female speak with confidence to the assembled council. She was small, barely 2 meters tall. Her skin was pale, her body seemed fragile compared to the warriors around her. Yet she stood there, challenging an empire that had conquered nearly 1,000 worlds. "What do we know of this human?" the Emperor asked. Minister Krell pulled up files on his personal display. Sarah Chen, age 42 standard years. She served in their military for 20 years before being assigned to diplomatic duties. Her file lists her as a decorated veteran, though we have no details of what she did during her service. "Just a soldier playing diplomat," one of the generals scoffed. "The humans have been in space for less than a century. They barely understand the technology they use. They should be grateful we allow them on the council at all." The Emperor stood. The room fell silent immediately. At his full height, Zaltox towered over everyone present. He walked down from the throne, his footsteps echoing. "This human has insulted us before the entire council," he said slowly. "If we do nothing, others will think we are weak. They will think they can disrespect us without consequence." "Economic sanctions?" Minister Krell suggested. "We can isolate their colonies, prevent trade." "No," The Emperor cut him off. This requires a clear message, one that will be understood by every species in the Empire. He turned to his personal guard. Send for the Shadow Collective. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Even the veteran warriors shifted uncomfortably. The Shadow Collective was not spoken of lightly. They were the Empire's ultimate tool, reserved for situations where traditional military force was inappropriate. Within an hour, a figure materialized in the throne room. It appeared to be made of darkness itself, constantly shifting and flowing. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Emperor, I have a task for the collective, Jaltok said. A human named Sarah Chen has dishonored the Empire. She must be eliminated. Her body is to be returned to Earth in pieces, as tradition demands for those who show such disrespect. The shadow form rippled. How many operatives do you wish deployed? The Emperor considered. How many does the collective recommend for a single human target? Standard protocol would be 3 operatives for a diplomatic target. However, given the symbolic importance, we could deploy 6 to ensure complete success. I want the galaxy to understand what happens when someone dishonors us. Send your 12 best. Make it clear that this human never stood a chance. The shadow form bowed. It will be done, Great Emperor. Do you have a preference for how quickly the operation should be completed? Take whatever time is needed to do it properly, Jaltox replied. But I want documentation. Full recordings. When we return her body to Earth, I want them to see exactly how outmatched she was. As you command. The shadow form began to fade. We will track her movements, find the optimal time and location, and complete the operation with maximum efficiency. Captain Sarah Chen will be dead within the month. After the shadow departed, Minister Krell approached the Emperor. My lord, 12 operatives seems excessive for one human. The cost alone. The cost is irrelevant, the Emperor interrupted. This is about sending a message. When the other species see that we deployed our 12 most elite assassins against a single human, they will understand the seriousness of disrespect. And when they see how easily those 12 completed their task, they will remember the price of defiance. The Emperor returned to his throne. He pulled up information about Earth on his personal display. A small planet, mostly water, orbiting an unremarkable star. The atmosphere was breathable but harsh. The gravity was higher than most civilized worlds. The native life showed unusual aggression. A Class 9 world, he murmured. Barely habitable. The humans call it a paradise, Krell said with amusement. They actually choose to live there. It shows how primitive they are. The Emperor nodded slowly. The file classified Earth as a death world in galactic terms. Most species would find it uncomfortable at best, lethal at worst. Yet humans thrive there. It was curious, but ultimately irrelevant. Whatever made them able to survive on such a harsh planet would not help Sarah Chen against the Shadow Collective. He closed the file and looked out over his throne room. The Empire had stood for 3,000 years. It would stand for 3,000 more. One defiant human would not change that. In a few weeks, her body would be returned to Earth as a warning. The humans would learn their place. Order would be maintained. It never occurred to Emperor Zeltox that he had just made the worst decision of his reign. In trying to send a message to humanity, he was about to receive one in return, and it would be written in the blood of his 12 best assassins. New Terra was beautiful in its own way. The colony had been established only 15 years ago, and much of the planet remained wild. Rolling hills covered in tall grass stretched to distant mountains. Small farms dotted the landscape, connected by dirt roads that wound between fields of earth crops growing in alien soil. Sarah Chen stood in her workshop, her hands covered in grease as she worked on a tractor engine. The workshop was a simple building behind her family's farmhouse, with one large door facing the fields. Tools hung on the walls, organized by type and size. Through the open door, she could see the sun starting to rise over the eastern hills. She had known they were coming for 3 days now. Her contacts in the diplomatic service had sent a coded warning. The Empire had deployed assassins. They were tracking her movements. They would strike soon. Sarah had not run. Running would only delay the inevitable. Instead, she had come here, to her brother's farm on New Terra. She had sent her brother and his family away on a convenient vacation. Then, she had prepared. The assassins arrived separately over 2 days, each using different cover identities. They were good at their work. A casual observer would never notice them. But Sarah was not a casual observer. She had spent 20 years in military service, much of it in intelligence and special operations. She knew how to spot predators. There were 12 of them, just as the warning had indicated. They took positions around the farm, watching, learning her patterns. They thought they were invisible. Sarah let them think that. She went about her daily routine, working in the workshop, eating simple meals, sleeping at regular hours. She acted like someone who had no idea death was circling her. On the 3rd morning, the assassins prepared to strike. They gathered at predetermined positions around the workshop. The plan was simple and efficient. 12 against 1. They would move in simultaneously from all angles. The target would have no chance to escape, no time to react. Skresh took point position. He was a Nextarian, a species known for their ability to bend light around their bodies. To most sensors he was completely invisible. He had killed more than 300 targets in his career, many of them guarded by the best security systems in the galaxy. This mission was rated as easy. A single human on a remote farm. It would be over in seconds. He moved closer to the workshop, his form shifting, like water, perfectly silent. Through the open door, he could see the target. Sarah Chen stood at a workbench, her back to the door, focused on some piece of equipment. She seemed completely unaware. Skresh activated his weapon, a molecular blade that could cut through nearly any material. The blade would sever her spine first, ensuring she could not fight back. Then he would make the killing cuts according to tradition. He stepped through the doorway. His foot touched a pressure plate. The explosion was not large, but in the confined space of the doorway, it did not need to be. The blast caught Skresh directly, throwing him backward. His light-bending ability failed as his concentration broke. For a moment he was visible, his body torn and bleeding. The figure at the workbench flickered and vanished. It had never been real, just a hologram, crude but effective. The other 11 assassins reacted instantly. This was not according to plan, but they were professionals. They had trained for unexpected situations. They began to converge on the workshop from all sides. Karal crashed through the sidewall, his 4 arms ready for combat. He was a Taka warrior monk, trained since childhood in 17 different martial arts. His species was naturally stronger and faster than humans. He scanned the interior of the workshop with all 6 of his eyes. It was empty. A red dot appeared on his chest. Karal moved with incredible speed, throwing himself to the side. The bullet missed his heart, but tore through his shoulder. He rolled behind a workbench, confused. Bullets? The humans still used chemical propellant weapons? Such primitive technology should not have been able to touch him. Another shot rang out, this one punching through the metal workbench. Karal felt pain explode in his leg. The bullets were not standard ammunition. They were dense, heavy, moving at velocities that should not be possible from a chemical weapon. She is not in the workshop, Karal transmitted to the others. She is outside, range unknown. She is using primitive ballistic weapons. Vorash did not wait for further discussion. He was a crystalline being from a high-gravity world. His body could phase through solid matter at will. Walls meant nothing to him. He moved through the workshop wall as if it did not exist, heading toward where the shots had come from. He passed through the exterior wall and immediately felt something wrong. His body became solid again automatically, responding to a frequency field he had not detected. Before he could react, the ground beneath him erupted. The mine had been buried shallow, packed with ball bearings and simple explosive. The shrapnel tore through Vorash's crystalline structure. He tried to phase again, to escape, but his body would not respond. The frequency field was disrupting his natural abilities. He fell, his body shattering into pieces on the ground. From her position 200 meters away, Sarah watched through her rifle scope. 2 down, 10 to go. She had chosen this position carefully. It offered clear sightlines to the workshop and the surrounding area. It was elevated enough to give her a tactical advantage. And most importantly, it was where she wanted to be, not where they would expect her to be. The assassins were good. She would give them that. They adapted quickly to the unexpected resistance. She watched as they began to spread out, using proper tactical formation. They were trying to locate her position without exposing themselves. But they were thinking like assassins, not like soldiers. They were used to stealth, to controlled environments, to overwhelming technological advantage. They were not used to someone fighting back with simple, brutal efficiency. Sarah shifted position, moving 30 meters to her left. She had prepared multiple firing positions, each with clear fields of fire. The assassins would be scanning for her from where she had fired. By the time they located that position, she would be somewhere else. She settled into her new spot and looked through her scope again. One of the assassins was moving through the tall grass, using some kind of active camouflage. The technology made him nearly invisible to the naked eye, but it did nothing to hide the way the grass moved as he passed through it. Sarah led her target by half a meter and squeezed the trigger. The assassin dropped without a sound. 3 down. Inside the workshop, Corral was trying to stop the bleeding from his wounds. His training had included field medicine, but his body was going into shock. The bullet in his leg had shattered bone. He needed immediate medical attention. Requesting extraction, he transmitted. Target is more dangerous than anticipated. We need to reassess. Negative, came the reply from the mission commander. Zareth. She was a Velkari hunter, famous for tracking prey across entire planets. The Emperor wants this done. We have 10 operatives still combat capable. She is one human with primitive weapons. We will adapt and complete the mission. Crow wanted to argue, but discipline held. He applied emergency sealant to his wounds and prepared to move. The target had superior position, but she would have to move eventually. When she did, they would find her. What Crow did not understand, what none of the assassins understood, was that Sarah had no intention of running. This was her ground. She had prepared it. She knew every sight line, every piece of cover, every advantage the terrain offered. The assassins were hunting her. But on this ground, with these rules, Sarah Chen was the hunter. She watched them move, marking their positions in her mind. They were reforming, preparing for a coordinated assault on her last known position. They still thought they had the advantage. They still thought their technology and numbers would win. Sarah checked her rifle, then pulled out her sidearm to verify it was ready. She had 6 magazines for the rifle, 3 for the pistol. She also had 12 grenades, 4 claymore mines still undeployed, and a combat knife her grandfather had carried in Earth's last major war. It was not advanced technology. Most of it was centuries old by galactic standards. But it had one important quality that the assassin's equipment lacked. Sarah knew exactly how to use it. She settled in to wait. Patience was something humans excelled at. They were persistence hunters, evolved to chase prey for hours or days until it collapsed from exhaustion. Sarah could wait. She had time. The assassins did not. The sun climbed higher, turning the morning cool into afternoon heat. Sarah had moved 3 more times, each time taking a shot, each time relocating before the assassins could respond. 2 more of them were down. She was being careful with her ammunition, making every shot count. The assassins were learning, but they were learning the wrong lessons. They thought this was about firepower and technology. They kept trying to use their advanced equipment to locate her, to predict her movements, to counter her attacks. What they did not understand was that this was not about technology at all. This was about understanding the ground, the wind, the sun's position. This was about reading how grass moved, how shadows fell, how sound carried across open terrain. These were skills humans had developed over hundreds of thousands of years, long before they even dreamed of reaching the stars. Zareth, the mission commander, crouched behind a small rise in the ground. She was frustrated and growing angry. 5 of her team were dead or wounded. 5 elite operatives, defeated by 1 human with primitive weapons. It made no sense. She activated her scanner again, sweeping for heat signatures, movement, electromagnetic emissions. Nothing. The human was either using some kind of advanced stealth technology, or she was simply better at hiding than the scanner was at finding. Mextar, report, Zareth said into her comm. Position 7, came the reply. No visual contact. Recommend we... The transmission cut off with a sharp crack of a rifle shot. Zareth cursed in her native language. 6 down. She had to change tactics. Direct assault was not working. The human had prepared this battlefield too well. Fine. Zareth was a hunter. She understood patience. She would wait for darkness. The human would have to rest eventually. That was when they would strike. She assumed that humans were like most species in the galaxy. She assumed they would struggle to operate effectively in darkness, that they would need rest after a day of combat, that they would make mistakes when tired. Sarah Chen had not slept in 36 hours. She would not sleep for another 24 if needed. Humans could function at reasonable efficiency for days without sleep, pushing their bodies far beyond what most species considered possible. It was another gift from Earth, another adaptation from a world that did not forgive weakness. As the afternoon wore on, Sarah noticed the pattern. The assassins had stopped moving. They were taking defensive positions, settling in. They were going to wait for nightfall. Smart, but predictable. She used the time to eat and drink. Protein bars and water. Simple but effective. She also used the time to think. 6 down meant 6 left. The odds were getting better, but she could not afford to be careless. These were still elite operatives, probably the best their species had to offer. One of them worried her more than the others. She had spotted a Valkyrie among the group. The Valkyrie were natural hunters, with senses far beyond human baseline. If any of the assassins would adapt to this kind of combat, it would be that one. Sarah decided to change her approach. She had been reactive, responding to their movements. Time to become proactive. She moved through the tall grass, using the same techniques that would have been familiar to a human hunter 10,000 years ago. Move slow, stay low, use the wind to mask your scent and sound. Read the terrain. Trust your instincts. She found one of them 30 minutes later, a Grixtal, if she identified the species correctly. He was hiding behind a cluster of rocks, watching the workshop area through some kind of optical device. His scales provided natural camouflage, blending with the gray stone. Sarah did not shoot him. At this range, she could not guarantee a clean kill, and a wounded enemy would alert the others. Instead, she marked his position in her mind, and moved on. She was hunting all of them, and that meant learning where they all were before she struck. It took another hour to locate the others. They had formed a loose perimeter, each assassin watching a different sector. Professional work. They were learning. But they were still thinking in terms of a perimeter defense. They assumed the threat would come from outside, from a distance. They were not expecting someone to slip through their perimeter and attack from within. Sarah made her choice. The Grixtal was isolated from the others. His position gave him a good view of the workshop, but it also put his back to a steep slope. He was trapped by his own tactical decision. She circled around, moving down the slope with careful precision. Each step was tested before putting her full weight down. Each movement was deliberate. She had time. Rushing would only create noise. When she was within 10 meters, she drew her combat knife. The rifle would be too loud, would alert the others immediately. This needed to be silent. The Grixtal never heard her coming. His natural armor protected him from most threats. But Sarah knew anatomy. She knew where the gaps were, where the softer tissue lay beneath the scales. The knife found the space at the base of his skull, severing the spine with one quick thrust. 7 down. Sarah moved immediately, knowing the others would notice when he stopped responding to check-ins. She needed to be far from this position before they came to investigate. She was 50 meters away when she heard the first alert call. The assassins had found their dead comrade. Good. Let them worry. Let them wonder how she had gotten so close. What Sarah did not know was that her actions had just triggered a fundamental shift in how the remaining assassins saw this mission. They had started this thinking they were the hunters. Now, they were beginning to understand that they were the prey. Zareth stood over the body of the Grixtal operative. The kill was clean, professional, a single strike to the vital point. The human had been within touching distance, and the operative had never known she was there. She is adapting, one of the other assassins said. His name was Talvex, a Korathi infiltration specialist. She has moved from ranged combat to close quarters. We need to change our approach. No, Zareth said firmly. We stick to the plan. When darkness falls, we have the advantage. We have night vision equipment. We have thermal scanners. We have technology that will let us see in complete darkness as if it were daylight. And if that is not enough? Tolvex asked quietly. Zareth did not answer immediately. She was looking at the dead operative, thinking about the human who had killed him. Sarah Chen was supposed to be a diplomat, a former soldier assigned to paperwork and meetings. But the skills on display here were not those of a regular soldier. These were the skills of someone who had operated in the darkest corners of warfare, someone who had survived situations that killed most others. We call for reinforcements, Zareth finally said. We tell the Shadow Collective that this target requires additional resources. The Emperor will not be pleased, Tolvex pointed out. He sent 12 of us specifically to show the humans they cannot stand against the Empire. The Emperor will be less pleased if we all die here, Zareth countered. She activated her long-range communicator, preparing to send a message back to Imperial space. The communicator did not connect. She tried again. Still nothing. She has jamming equipment, Talvex said with growing realization. She has isolated us. We cannot call for help, cannot call for extraction. Sarah was indeed jamming their communications, using equipment she had set up 3 days ago. It was simple technology, broadcasting noise across the frequencies the Empire typically used. It would not stop short-range communications between the assassins, but it would prevent them from calling their ship or requesting support. She wanted them to know they were alone. She wanted them to understand that this fight would end here, one way or another. There would be no escape, no backup, no sudden rescue. Night fell slowly on New Terra. The sun touched the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The temperature dropped quickly once the sun was gone. The assassins activated their night vision equipment and began to move. They moved as a unit now, watching each other's backs. They had learned that lesson. Isolation meant death. Sarah watched them through her own night vision scope. She had positioned herself on high ground, with multiple escape routes. She could see all 5 remaining assassins. They were moving toward her last known position, advancing carefully. She could take one shot, maybe two, before they located her. Then she would have to run, and they would give chase. It would become a running battle in the darkness. Sarah smiled. A running battle at night. That was something humans had been doing since before recorded history. The assassins had technology, but she had thousands of generations of human hunters behind her, all of them teaching her through instinct and training how to hunt in the dark. She settled her rifle and took aim. 5 left. The odds were almost even now. Almost. The night was cold and clear. Stars filled the sky, more than could ever be seen from Earth with its light pollution. Sarah lay on the ridge, her breathing slow and controlled. Her body ached from the day of combat, but the pain was familiar, almost comfortable. She had learned long ago to push past discomfort. Below her, the 5 remaining assassins moved in a tight formation. They had learned from the deaths of their companions. No more spreading out, no more isolated positions. They advanced together, covering each other's movements. Smart. But it also meant they were thinking defensively now. They were trying to survive, not to kill. That was a fundamental shift in mindset, and Sarah knew how to exploit it. She fired once. The shot took down the leftmost assassin, a Korathi. The other 4 immediately went to ground, scanning for her position. She was already moving, sliding down the back of the ridge, into the darkness. 4 left. Zareth watched where her team member had fallen. The shot had come from elevated ground to the north. The human was using terrain masterfully, always taking the high ground, always moving before they could respond. It was basic military tactics, nothing sophisticated, but executed perfectly. "She is toying with us," Tolvek said quietly. "She could have taken more shots. She chose to take one and withdraw." Zareth knew he was right. The human was not just trying to kill them. She was trying to break them mentally, to make them feel hunted. It was working. "We make for the landing zone," Zareth decided. "We will fortify there and wait for the ship's scheduled return in 3 days. If we can hold that position, we can survive." It was admitting defeat, but Zareth was practical. 8 of her 12 team members were dead. Now, it was about survival. The 4 remaining assassins began moving toward the landing zone, a flat area about 2 kilometers away. They moved cautiously, constantly scanning for threats. Every shadow seemed to hide danger. Every sound could be the human preparing to strike. Sarah followed them. She knew where they were going. There was only one good landing zone within reasonable distance. She had scouted it days ago, had already prepared it. The assassins reached the landing zone just before midnight. It was a clearing surrounded by low hills with good sightlines in all directions. They immediately began setting up defensive positions, using portable shields and automated weapon systems. By dawn, they had created a small fortress. Energy barriers protected them from gunfire. Sensors watched every approach. Automated turrets would target anything that moved within range. It was an impenetrable position. They settled in to wait. They could hold for 3 days easily. But Sarah did not attack. She watched from a distance, studying their defensive setup. She could not breach it with her current weapons. A direct assault would be suicide. So she did not attack. She waited. The first day passed slowly for the assassins. They took turns sleeping, always keeping at least 2 awake and alert. The automated systems watched for any sign of the human. Nothing. The second day was harder. Water supplies were running low. The local water was safe to drink for most species, but none of them wanted to leave the protective barrier to collect any. Food was not a problem yet, but it would be soon. The third day broke their nerves. Tolvex was on watch when he noticed something, a shadow on the hillside that had not been there before. He activated his scope, zooming in. It was one of their dead team members, propped up in a sitting position, clearly visible. The body had been there for hours, maybe days, The human had placed it where they would eventually see it. A message, a reminder of what happened to those who came for her. "She is still out there," Tolvex said. "She is watching us." Zareth felt a chill. The human had been patient for 3 days. She had not attacked, had not revealed her position. She had simply waited, letting them sit in their fortress, slowly running out of supplies, slowly breaking down mentally. "The ship arrives in 6 hours, Zareth said. "We can hold until then." But could they? Zareth was beginning to doubt. The human had outthought them at every turn. What if she had planned for this? What if she was waiting for the ship? 6 hours later, the ship arrived. It descended toward the landing zone, its engines roaring. The 4 assassins prepared to board. Relief flooding through them. They had survived. Against all odds, they had survived. The boarding ramp extended. That was when Sarah struck. She had spent 3 days preparing the landing zone. Not with high technology, but with simple, brutal efficiency. Buried explosives, positioned for maximum effect. Tripwires connected to claymore mines. Overlapping fields of fire. The assassins had fortified their position, but they had not cleared the landing zone itself. They had not checked for traps. They had assumed that the human would not get close enough to set any. They were wrong. The first explosions took out the ship's engines. The second wave caught 2 of the assassins as they broke cover to run for the ship. Zareth and Tolvex threw themselves behind their energy barriers, but Sarah had positioned charges there too. She had watched them set up their defenses. She knew exactly where they would hide. The barriers failed under multiple explosions. Tolvex died instantly, caught in a blast that his body could not withstand. Zareth survived, but barely. Her left side was burned, her right leg shattered. She lay in the dirt, trying to reach her weapon. Sarah walked into the clearing. She had approached from the one direction they were not watching, from downwind, using the explosions as cover for her movement. She stood over Zareth, her rifle pointed down. The Velkari looked up at her with a mixture of pain and something that might have been respect. "Why?" Zareth asked, coughing blood. "Why fight so hard? You could have run, hidden, disappeared." Sarah looked at her for a long moment. "Your emperor sent you to send a message. He wanted to show what happens when someone disrespects the empire. I am sending a message back. We did not start this, but we will finish it." "You are one human," Zareth said, "one soldier. The empire has millions. But now, they know what one human can do. Let them think about what millions of us could do." She fired once. Zareth died quickly. Sarah stood in the clearing, surrounded by bodies and burning wreckage. 12 assassins, the empire's best, all dead. She felt no joy, no triumph, just exhaustion and a grim satisfaction. The message was sent. She walked to the damaged ship. It would not fly again, but its systems were still partially functional. She spent 2 hours working, stripping out what she needed: medical sensors, body preservation pods, recording equipment. The Emperor wanted the bodies returned. Fine, she would return them, but she would do it her way. Over the next day, Sarah worked with mechanical precision. She had field medical training, including anatomy for multiple species. She documented everything with the ship's recording equipment. Each assassin's death, each tactical error, each moment where human determination had overcome alien technology. She prepared the bodies exactly as imperial tradition demanded, but with her own addition. Full tactical analysis, recorded from her perspective, showing every decision, every technique, every advantage she had used. When she was done, she programmed the ship's emergency beacon and autopilot. The ship would drift back to Imperial space, carrying its cargo of failure. Sarah Chen walked back to her brother's farm as the sun rose. She was covered in dirt and blood, exhausted beyond measure, but she was alive. The Empire had sent 12 assassins. She was sending them back in pieces, with a message the Emperor would never forget. The damaged ship drifted through space for 2 weeks before it reached Imperial territory. Its emergency beacon finally caught the attention of a patrol vessel near the outer colonies. When they scanned it, they found life support was offline, engines destroyed, but the cargo bay was intact. The patrol captain reported immediately to command. An assassin ship, damaged and drifting. No survivors. They towed it back to the Imperial homeworld, wondering what had happened. Accidents were rare with Shadow Collective ships. They were built to the highest standards, maintained perfectly. 3 days later, the ship sat in a secure hangar at the Imperial Palace. Commander Thexelar stood before it, along with several Shadow Collective representatives. The shadow figure from before was there, its form rippling with what might have been concern. "Open it," Thexelar ordered. The cargo bay doors opened slowly. Inside were 12 stasis pods, arranged in careful rows. The pods were functioning, keeping their contents preserved. Medical readouts on each pod showed vital signs at 0. "They are all dead," the shadow figure said quietly. Thexelar approached the first pod. Through the clear panel he could see a Nextarian operative, but something was wrong. The body had been taken apart and carefully reassembled. Organs were visible, laid out in anatomical precision. Muscle groups were separated and labeled. It was not the work of combat damage. This was surgical dissection. He moved to the next pod, the same, and the next. All 12 assassins had been dissected with clinical precision, their bodies studied and documented. Attached to each pod was a data chip. "Play the recordings," Thexelar said, though part of him did not want to know. The first recording showed a workshop interior from a first-person perspective, Thresh's perspective. The video showed him approaching, activating his weapon, stepping through the doorway. Then the explosion. The recording cut to thermal imaging, showing the Nextarian's body cooling as he died. The second recording showed Krall's assault through the wall. It showed him being shot, wounded, struggling to understand how primitive bullets had penetrated his defenses. A calm voice provided analysis over the recording, pointing out his mistakes, explaining how predictability had made him easy to target. Each recording was the same. Combat footage from the assassin's own equipment, recovered and analyzed. Over each one, Sarah Chen's voice provided tactical commentary, explaining what they had done wrong, how they had failed, why they had died. The final data chip was different. It showed Sarah Chen sitting in her workshop, looking directly at the camera. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. But her voice was steady and clear. "Emperor Jaltox," she began, "you sent 12 of your best to kill me. I have returned them to you, so you can study where they failed. This was not inevitable. Your operatives were skilled, well-equipped, and professional, but they made a fundamental error. They assumed that because humans are young in the stars, we are weak. They forgot that Earth made us what we are." She stood, walking slowly around the workshop as she spoke. "My planet is what you call a Class 9 death world. Every animal on Earth is dangerous. Every plant could be poisonous. The weather can kill. The bacteria can kill. For millions of years, humans survived by being smarter, tougher, and more relentless than everything trying to kill us. We did not evolve to accept defeat. We evolved to keep going until we won or died." Sarah stopped and looked back at the camera. "Your assassins learned this too late. They had technology, but I had experience. They had training, but I had instinct. They fought to complete a mission. I fought to survive. That makes all the difference." Her expression hardened. "I did not want this fight. I spoke honestly at the council, because I believe the tribute system is wrong. I refuse to bow because humans bow to no one. These are principles, not insults. But you decided to answer words with assassins." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "So here is my message, Emperor. I have sent your 12 best back in pieces. Every wound, every mistake, every moment of their deaths is documented. Study them. Learn from them. Because if you send more, I will do the same thing. If you send 100, Earth will meet them, and you will get them all back the same way. Sarah picked up something from a table, a combat knife, old and worn. This knife is 300 years old. It belonged to my great-great-grandfather. He carried it in Earth's last world war, before we went to the stars. Billions died in that war. Entire cities were destroyed, and we kept fighting. We have always kept fighting, no matter the odds. She set the knife down. I am one soldier. Earth has billions more like me. Some are better trained. Some are tougher. Some are more ruthless. We do not have your technology, but we have something more important. We never quit. We never surrender. We will fight with whatever we have until there is nothing left. Sarah walked back to the camera, her final words delivered with absolute certainty. You can destroy Earth. You probably have the firepower to crack the planet itself. But it would cost you. It would cost you thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, years of war. And the colonies would still fight. Every human in the galaxy would become a threat you would have to hunt down. Is your pride worth that price? She was silent for a moment, then continued more softly. I do not want war. Most humans do not want war. We came to the stars to explore, to learn, to grow. We would prefer to be your friends, or at least your peaceful neighbors. But if you insist on being our enemies, we will oblige you. The choice is yours, Emperor. Choose wisely. The recording ended. The hangar was silent. Everyone present had watched the recordings. Everyone had seen how 12 elite assassins had been defeated by one human, using primitive technology and ruthless efficiency. She is bluffing, one of the generals finally said. She is trying to scare us with bravado. Is she? Thexelar asked quietly. He pulled up a file, the one on Earth he had reviewed weeks ago. He read it more carefully this time. Class 9 Death World. Gravity 1.3 times standard. Atmospheric pressure variable. Native life forms highly aggressive. Dominant species are persistence hunters, social pack animals, capable of extreme endurance. He pulled up human military history. Their most recent major war had lasted 6 years and killed 50 million of them. They had used weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. And that was before they left their planet. What do we know about human colonies? Thexelar asked. 47 settled worlds, Minister Krell replied. Population approximately 15 billion. Most colonies are on Class 7 or Class 8 worlds. They seem to prefer planets that other species find uncomfortable. Military strength? Unknown. We estimate several hundred warships, but intelligence is limited. They do not share military information openly. Thexelar closed the files and turned to the shadow figure. What is the Shadow Collective's assessment? The shadow form was still for a long moment. Sarah Chen is not bluffing. If we send more assassins, she will defeat them. She has proven she can. And if we escalate to military action, the humans will fight. They will lose eventually, but the cost to the Empire would be substantial. We cannot let this stand, a general protested. She killed 12 of our operatives. She dishonored the Emperor. We must respond. With what? Thexelar asked. More assassins that she will send back in pieces? An invasion fleet that will spend years fighting through every human colony? Humans are persistence hunters. They evolved to chase prey until it died of exhaustion. What happens when we become the prey? The argument continued for hours. Some wanted revenge, others wanted to demonstrate imperial power. But slowly, practical voices began to prevail. Emperor Zaltox listened to it all in silence. He watched the recordings again, studying the human female who had defeated his best assassins. She was not special, not in any way that showed on the surface. She was simply a soldier who had been pushed into a corner and fought her way out. If one ordinary human soldier could do this, what could thousands do? What could millions do? Enough, the Emperor finally said. The room fell silent immediately. I have made a decision. He stood, his massive form dominating the chamber. The human spoke truth when she said we answered words with violence. She questioned our tribute system, and we sent assassins. That was my error in judgment. Great Emperor, someone began. Silence. Zhaltox's voice was absolute. I built this empire through strength, but also through wisdom. Wisdom is knowing when to fight and when to walk away. The humans are not worth the cost of conquest. They are too dangerous, too stubborn, and they hold no strategic resources we need. He looked around at his advisors and generals. The tribute requirement for humanity is waived. Their colonies are recognized as sovereign territory. And Captain Sarah Chen is to be left alone. She has earned the title of untouchable, reserved for warriors who defeat our champions. The other species will see this as weakness, Minister Krell warned. No, Zhaltox replied. They will see it as wisdom. We chose to fight a species that could fight back effectively. We lost 12 elite operatives. Now we choose to make peace before the cost rises higher. That is not weakness. That is the practical calculation that has kept the Empire strong for 3,000 years. He walked to the pods containing the dead assassins. These 12 died doing their duty. They will be honored. But their deaths taught us something valuable. Not every species can be conquered easily. Not every battle is worth fighting. Sometimes, the wise choice is to accept that an opponent is too dangerous to provoke. The Emperor turned back to his advisors. Send a message to Earth. Tell them we acknowledge their sovereignty. Tell them the tribute is waived. Tell them that Captain Sarah Chen has earned our respect. And if they demand more, a general asked. If they see this as weakness and push for greater concessions. Zhaltox considered this. Then we will respond appropriately. But I do not think they will. The human female said they came to the stars to explore and learn. I believe her. They want to be left alone, not to conquer. If we leave them in peace, they will likely do the same. 2 weeks later, Sarah Chen received an official communication from the Imperial Court. The Empire acknowledged human sovereignty. The tribute system would not apply to human worlds, and she personally was granted the title of untouchable, with all the rights and protections that came with it. She read the message twice, then deleted it. She did not need imperial titles or recognition. She had done what needed to be done, nothing more. She went back to her brother's farm on New Terra. She fixed the tractor engine she had been working on when the assassins arrived. She planted crops that would be harvested in the fall. She lived her life quietly, hoping never to need those particular skills again. But the galaxy remembered. The story spread through the Council of Species, then further. The Empire had sent 12 elite assassins to kill one human. That human had sent them all back in pieces, and the Empire had backed down. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, not through diplomacy or technology, but the old-fashioned way. Through demonstrated capability, earned respect, and the clear message that some species were simply too dangerous to push. The Empire never sent assassins after humans again.